It's all good.
Oh. Here's a dumb thing I did. Don't think this. Oh, I'm going to be at Comic-Con all day. Great day to break in those new shoes.
Try wearing some without support. That's the only pair you brought.
Yeah, I'm dealing with that now. But I'm sitting now, so it's all good. Do you guys get a chance to go to the con later, or are you working all day?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
I have to. I really need to go. I have like my kids gave me a shopping list. I'm try to get over there.
Oh, you have to get some exclusives?
No, my daughter wants Doctor Who stuff. I want Twin Peaks stuff. My other daughter wants.
I got the Funko double pack of the Black Lodge, Laura Palmer.
Oh,
and,
Oh, good. I gotta get over there.
I'm excited.
I love a toy of a dead woman's corpse. Oh, the Black Lodge Laura Palmer.
Black Lodge, Laura Palmer, and Dale Cooper.
Cheryl Lee was in my house once.
I mean, that's a good story to start off with.
She was when I was married. She was best friends with our neighbor, and our kids played together. And she was over our neighbor's house, and then they went over to our house where the kids were, and my then wife was there. And I came home from work, and I walked in my house, and Laura Palmer was sitting in my kitchen.
It would have been weirder if just Bob walked in.
I needed a minute.
So it's well known that you're like a massive horror nut. Like you love it. What inspired you when you were younger? What really got you into the horror genre? What was your?
It was my earliest memories are of like staying up late at night and watching the Universal horror movies with my mom. Saturday night 11:30, watching the Universal classics on and then in Boston it was called Classic Horror. But I have 4 older brothers, and everybody in my family is very athletic, and they hunt and they fish, and I was never that guy. And I was like, this Star Trek, Dark Shadows, The Night Stalker. I'm wearing a Night Stalker shirt. They were the whole shack shout out. Those were all my football. Like that was the stuff that I was into, and then I just the show itself. The show's not Stranger Things is set in the mid '80s. Our show isn't set anywhere specifically, but there's a very 70s feel, a very 70s vibe to it. I likened it to like a really funny episode of The Night Gallery. Like I wanted it to feel like a show that I would have watched as a kid. And so there's a very sort of Dark Shadows Night Gallery feel to it. There's a lot of Twin Peaks in the show, to me. And yeah, it's informed by those things that you like.
So it's kind of like you bring up Kolchak. It seems like there's this return to kind of the middle-aged anti-hero type like he represented these days.
Yes.
In a lot of, especially in this show.
I think so. That was sort of what we call an accidental discovery. The main premise for this show was I was going to do something for fun, just to do. And I thought, well, what if I took a horror movie and just put my dad in the middle of it? And he would be my dad, which means that he wouldn't care about anything in the movie. But people would have to deal with him, and that became the premise. And then the premise became, what if my dad was Buffy the Vampire Slayer? And then that sort of, and then I said, well, for it to be a show, there would have to be somebody that really, in the show, there should be the person that should be the lead, and Evie is the person that should be the lead of the show, but she has to deal with this guy that doesn't belong there, and that became the sort of the conflict of the show, and it sort of invented itself, it sort of fell into itself accidentally.
How do you decide how much humor to put in? Where do you draw that line? How do you decide?
That's a great question. It's like in the early 1970s, there was a pornography case with the Supreme Court, and I believe it was one of the Supreme Court justice at the time said, the definition of pornography is I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. And that's kind of my feeling about the humor. Like, I have a couple of rules, which is that the demons are not funny, the demons are scary, the demons are straight as a heart attack, the demons don't know that they're not in a horror movie, the demons think they're in a horror movie. And then the people are funny because they behave in a normal way, but I will always walk up to the line of like, to push it for a little bit of, to be as funny as I can in as many ways as I can. There's a lot of hidden humor in it. When they're listening to the radio, there's usually something funny if you're listening. There's a lot of weird magazine titles, and the magazines that they read this year are Sensual Hobo, Female Crane Operator, Divorced Female Sheriff Magazine. There's always.
I just have to grab you in like a minute.
Okay, great. I try to make it as dense as I can. Round robin.
I was going to say, speaking of the demons being actually scary, it does harken back to like older horror films with a smaller budget. So how did you learn to be so thrifty? And how much do budget concerns affect your storytelling decisions?
There are a lot. I mean, I said that I wanted the monsters to be practical because I believe for it to be funny, you have to have no doubt that these things are really there because the air goes out of the balloon otherwise. Comedy and horror have to coexist on the same plane for it to work. And it's the reason American Werewolf in London works is because it's not CG, which is not to say CG isn't important and great. And then the budget, it's like I have a sense of the budget, I have a sense of what I can get away for. I always try to push it a little bit, but I also will say the best stuff in the season came out of limitations. Like, we can't do that, we have to come up with something else, and then you're forced to be inventive. I like Evil Dead 2 a lot more than Army of Darkness. I love Army of Darkness, but Evil Dead 2 is a better movie, and it had a smaller budget. You don't need a big budget.
Sorry guys, I gotta grab you.
Oh, I apologize.
You rock, sir.
Oh, maybe I'll come back.
By the way, when do you have a costume?
They really jammed a bunch of people at one table. How's everybody doing? Can everybody still do the chicken? I'm not sure what that is. Make sure you're protected and you can do the chicken. And then there's just 3 things in the middle. There's just, that said rotisserie chicken. No, it says Larissa's Kitchen. And then just some walnuts. It's cool. You know how you guys need sweet chili, pork. All right. Cool, so we're just going to talk about that. Walnuts and pork jerky.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
Why we have you here.
Yeah, totally ready.
What do you feel like it's about the show that continues to resonate with viewers? Because I've just seen the popularity just continue to grow as like more and more buzz begins to kind of fill about it.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that. That's very good to hear. Well, I think one of the things for me that I love about it, that I love as a fan, like as a Simpsons fan, for example, is that Dana is such a funny writer, and the writers that he brought on are so fast that stuff happens so quickly that you might miss something funny if you're not, like, for me, I probably watch these things like 2 or 3 times as a fan, the same way I do with The Simpsons, because I don't want to miss any of the jokes. And Dana is so amazing, again, like that you would see on The Simpsons, about planning little Easter eggs and making homages to other shows and movies, and even like the newspapers and the magazines. Like, if there's ever something that's printed to be seen, if it's a poster, whatever it is, there's jokes in it. And so I feel like I would be that nerd who's like, pause it, can we zoom in? No, is that not a thing we can do? I'm not an FBI agent with a thing. Okay, all right, I'm sure it's funny, whatever it says. So yeah, anyway, so I think that's part of it, is that this just works on a lot of different layers. And so there's just like, it's really smart. For as goofy as it is, it's a really smart show. So hopefully that's part of it. And I know that, Johnny and I both, we love our characters and we love the relationship between our characters. And there's something very grounded and real there. And we only get to explore that more in the 2nd season. So I'm excited for people to see it. Yeah.
I heard you had said that you got to be in a couple more outfits this season. So
I did. People clothes!
So what are you most looking forward to when it comes to delving into Evie's personal life?
Well, I can't say that suddenly her dating life gets any better. That is patently untrue. But I think, what I would say it is her relationship to Denise, to Deborah Baker Jr.'s character. Yeah, there's some more stuff that they get into. There's more kind of girl stuff that happens with the two of them that was so much fun and a blast. And it is kind of fun to see, Evie literally let her hair down. So there's some really good juicy stuff in there. Yeah.
How do you tiptoe the line between, the horror and the comedy aspect? So they're two very different, on the spectrum.
Yeah. You know what? I think I think John would say and Dana would say my character really just reacts in the situation, and I don't know that she knows she's funny. I'm excited that I think she is funny. I mean, I don't think she's just like a straight person the same way. This is such an old reference with someone like Dave Foley on News Radio. I love The Kids in the Hall, so I loved News Radio. And he's still so funny, even though he's just like, a lot of the time it's someone else saying something crazy and then you just see the expression on his face, and that's what's funny. And so I don't feel like I have to be crazy to get to do comedy. And I don't always feel that way. Sometimes I do shows where, my character is very over the top. I'm the kind of character. So this was a really fun departure from that. And she's terrified when she's terrified, and when she's rolling her eyes, it's but those moments of comic relief, I think for me as a viewer, I need that stuff, because I do get really uncomfortable when something is just like relentlessly terrifying. I need to have those breather moments. Do you guys have that too, or do you love just like straight through? Yeah, breather. Yeah, breather moments. Not as many. Like for me, it's like the first couple of Aliens movies are like, well, I guess just the middle one. I guess the second one. The second one works the most for me because there's more kind of like moments of space and funnier characters, kind of. And those are the scariest movies to me, because as they've progressed, like they've just become more and more freaky and more like there's just nothing funny here at all. Humankind is doomed. What's the meaning of any of this?
Is that how you felt with Covenant? Did you get a chance to see it?
Yeah, I mean it was great. I was pleased because I did have problems with Prometheus. I really kind of struggled with that movie, but there's it's so like nihilistic now. It's just so like, do you know what I mean? Like existentialist, where you're just like, I don't know, why do I even
why do anything?
Maybe I should just die while I'm watching this. Like there's just this emptiness to it, and it's really provocative. But like I think I need that little Newt character. You know what I mean? I need the heart and soul. I need the person who inspires you to go on. And I think some movies, as we've progressed as a culture, as we make more horror movies, I think there's more like the shock value becomes like, let's not care about anyone, or like if you care about that person, they're going to get murdered within the first 20 minutes. I think I'm very old-fashioned. Like I still want that. I've been listening to the Dark Tower series, the Stephen King series, and I'm sorry, I just pounded that not thing. And same thing. He just writes these, where you're like, I care so deeply about these characters, because here's this kid that I want to live with. Here's this talking dog weasel raccoon that that the little kid has, and those bonds, I realize for me, are what kind of keep me going to withstand the horror. Otherwise, I'm like, great, this was depressing as hell,
This is kind of off the cuff, but Rick and Morty, it's so nihilistic and yet smart, and it seems like that's coming more you see in writing, like with this show and with Rick and Morty and shows like that. They hide this subtext in there, and you get like a really great there's like a whole philosophy in there.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Dana made the comparison to Doctor Strangelove, and I think that's kind of, maybe that's one of the origin stories of that style of writing too, is that sort of like in this, like the darkest possible situation, you're sort of like, there's an existentialism to it, but you're laughing, right? And that makes all the difference. If it's all absent of all of that, and then it's just the darkness, it's like, why? Where do we go from here?
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's a great point.
One other thing, if it's cool, if you guys have one more question. Do you find as an actress that like this sort of genre and sci-fi and more of the genre pictures and series give women more meaty, badass, like good roles these days. And that's where everybody's going, like with Charlize Theron and her work. I mean, that seems like, for you, is that what you're seeing happen?
I mean, I do think so. I think in general, and maybe this is true for you guys, I'd be curious to hear what you think. I a lot of the time now when I see a trailer for a movie or I hear that a movie is being made of something, especially if it's off of a book, my first thought is like, oh no, why isn't it a series? Why isn't it a series? Like, I want to see the Westworld, of 1,000 things. I would list The Dark Tower among them. It's like, I don't know that I want it to just be this movie. Even if it's 5 movies, it's like 1,000,000 books. It's thousands of pages.
I wanted them to stream that so bad.
Right. It feels like, wait, no, of all the things, like, why would you? No. So I think that's what we've gotten spoiled by, right? Is that because we have the ability to stream stuff, because folks like Netflix are just dropping all of these episodes, the onus on the television, the filmmaker, so to speak, is this better be real good from start to finish, because the expectation is like, this better be the best 12-hour movie I've ever seen. And so, and why wouldn't you want that as an actor too, to really get to perform that character so much and get time to develop backstories and stuff like that. And so, I love Sense8, and I am so. That show takes its time so hardcore, to the degree where you're like, this is another music video montage where everyone's just like having sex with each other and smiling and there's rainbows of glitter everywhere. But I love that because they take time to do that. It also means they take time to just like have this quiet moment with that phenomenal Korean actress from Host, who's just like brilliant, and then they'll have like just a silly, goofy, loving moment with the Spanish actor who plays the Mexican. He's all the actors, but like that is, you really feel like you get to live in their world for as much crazy shit is happening, and I just don't think that we had that before, and so you really get to love and know these characters, and as actors, I can't imagine that. Anybody who gets to do something like that on a regular basis is like, yeah, I just want to do this all the time now. Instead of being, in Serbia for 2 months, knocking out this one quick thing and then getting out, at a castle, and,
the depth to it. It gives you more story.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And that's the Stan relationship going to change? Are you going to affect him? Are you going to affect you? How's that going to?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like any great kind of antagonistic but loving partnership, there's no way for them not to continue to realize how important they are to each other. And I mean, I would hope, rather than like going the other way. And so there's some stuff that comes up. There's some like plot-driven stuff that comes up that Stan sees this opportunity to potentially change the course of his own personal history, which will deeply affect whether or not he even knows Evie. And that's that. There's nothing like "I'll never have met you" moments to go, oh, that's affecting. Like I care that I will never have known you. So there's some really rich stuff there. Exactly. And I think you start to see that in season 1. Those moments where they're both okay and they kind of, and I love those kinds of relationships where you're like, I'm not hugging you. Yeah.
So as you continue to delve into the characters, is there anything you find you're surprised to learn about yourself?
About myself, me?
Yeah, personally.
That's a great question. I mean, the thing that springs to mind that has been on my mind since it happened was honestly one of the last nights we were shooting. Johnny and I had a really emotional scene to do, and it was, we had been working for the season, and it was like this sort of light, misty rain that everyone was afraid was going to turn into a torrential downpour because it just rained a lot on us, and we had to really, it was amazing to see our crew go, okay, what can we do right now? Let's get something. But in this case, we didn't know if it was going to turn into a real downpour, but instead it was just this like cool mist, and we were shooting this scene, and I really had this moment of I felt something when we finished, and I like couldn't immediately identify it. This is gonna sound so stupid, and then all of a sudden I was like, I love acting. Oh my God, I love acting. I haven't felt like this since I was a freshman in college. Like, what happened? because for a long time I turned my back on that. I was like, no, it's not. It doesn't make sense. It is not important enough, and it's about physical things that I don't want to be judged for. And I was just really shitty and snobby about it when I lived in San Francisco, because like it's cool to be, just like not into that stuff when you live in San Francisco. And I love comedy so much, and that's been what I've been doing predominantly. And only with this show and with Legend of Korra, which is very different because you're not acting like this with someone with cameras. Have I really had those moments of like, oh, I really feel something deep here, and like this is, this feels important somehow. And I hope that people have that all the time with whatever they do. I hope they have that moment of connection of like, I'm really proud of my job right now. I would wish that for everyone, no matter what their job is.
With movies like Cabin in the Woods and Tucker and Dale vs. Evil and your show Stand
Against Evil, it's okay. Listen,
yeah, exactly.
Dana called it Stand versus Evil for like 2 interviews last year. We're like, that's not going to help with the Ash versus Evil Dead thing, which like he wrote for. I mean, he's like he doesn't care, but it doesn't. I was like, this is not. You gotta say it right.
Do you think we're going to get more of a resurgence of this like Evil Dead style comedy, like getting that horror and comedy element? You think we're going to get more of a resurgence of that?
I mean, I'm always ready for more of that because, like I said, that's what I respond to. I need that relief, and I like things that are self-aware, which is why something like Cabin in the Woods, I think is so fun for us, and I like homages to stuff. I don't mind. I don't need to see something that's like, this is so starkly original. I've never seen anything like it before in my life. I welcome that. That's great when you stumble across that, but I think it's also okay, especially in comedy, to bring the audience in and be like, hey, we're all super nerd fans, right? You'll get this. Like, we're inside this thing, right? I think that's a real phenomenon, and I think that will keep happening, because I think that's people see like, oh, we're responding. Even like Guardians of the Galaxy or Deadpool, right? That feeling of being on the inside of something seems so much better received than just like, here's a presentation of a Batman. For me, anyway, I want that kind of like, we know what's going on here,
So what is something you nerd out about personally?
I nerd out. I guess I've already nerded. What have I already nerded out about? Sense8 I nerded out about.
Yeah, you're very passionate about.
Yeah.
Well, it's just adorable. I just think it's so great. It's like if you're worried about the state of affairs in the universe and in the country, and then you see a show like that, you're like, oh, we're gonna be okay, everybody. Let's hug. Like, it really feels like that.
I legit shed tears when they said it was canceled.
Well, then now they're
we give
they're
it
doing another one. No one's gonna at least that. Yeah, I've been anti-binging, which is I've like not watched the last 4 of the second season because I'm like, I just want to save it. I just want to know it's there. So I love that.
And then we're gonna
Sure. And then I have not made it a secret that my favorite movie is Tron, like the original Tron. I just love it so much. It's just one of those things that like sunk in at the exact right time for me as a kid, and I still love it. Like, I could watch it today and be like, such an important movie. It's so ahead of its time. Yeah.
Final question about the show.
Sure.
So, Evie, even though she's like the most confident character on the show, is also the one that finds herself constantly in peril. Through like every episode, we're like, oh, again, I've been captured. So, is that part of the fun for you, or are you seeing it as a learning curve where she's going to start getting the drop on some demons?
That's a great question. Does she ever really get the drop on anybody? And I'm trying to think if season 2 is any different. No. I think it's funny that our last episode in season 1 had that Groundhog Day element to it, because I think that started to be her life in general. Is like, again, this happens again, and that somebody over there had said like, so why doesn't she just like take her daughter and move away? And I said, I think she and Stan have this like gross stubbornness that they both are like, well, eventually I'll overcome this, right? Like, I'm not going to be one-upped by this thing, this horrible thing. Like, you sort of becomes this checklist. Like, I gotta get through this.
Sorry,
So
Dana, we're just doing a swap.
Oh, no, sure. You've heard of him, you've seen him, you love him, may I welcome Noah. John, say back on. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
I want you to know there's some walnuts and some pork jerky right here on the table for you. We can't figure out why it's there.
Hi, boys and girls.
Hello. I hope you guys don't mind.
So I'm
worship
getting a
you with
little
our
Archie
microphones.
Bunker, Ralph Cramden kind of vibe from you when you do this shtick.
I think we borrowed liberally from the Archie Bunker, Carol O'Connor archetype for Stan.
Yeah.
And I'm also a film and TV geek to the max. And so I also borrowed from my heroes. Whenever I can, I sprinkled in a little Sterling Hayden. And we stole completely the chops and the facial hair I have for Stan from Quint, Robert Shaw's character in Jaws.
Yep.
And that's not by mistake, it's an outright steal, because I don't even know what kind of human beings they were. For all I know, I had no idea. But they both impacted me in a huge way growing up. Both Shaw in The Sting and in everything, and Jaws, and Sterling Hayden in everything he ever did, from Strange Love on. And so if you're going to borrow, I figure you can borrow from those guys. And I told Dana that, and we have very similar sensibilities. And so your eye and your ear are really good, because those are the guys.
How important is humor in this?
Say again?
How important is humor in this?
Well, here's the thing about Stan. Horror comedy is tricky. There's not that many great ones. So we're the top of the pyramid for me and for Dana is An American Werewolf in London, John Landis's American Werewolf in London. And the reason it's so good to me is that if there's two extremes in those spectrums, one, I'm making this up, but one Scooby-Doo, where it's funny, but the monsters are largely denuded. So you can crack a joke, but the monsters aren't a threat. And the other extreme is The Exorcist, where it's really scary, but aside from Lee J. Cobb making a couple of jokes, you can't really break a joke in The Exorcist. And so in the middle there, if you want to straddle those two, it's fucking hard. Because jokes can't be at the monster's expense, because then the monsters are not much of a threat, but the monsters can't step on the jokes. And so that's what we're trying to do instead. And it's hard.
It works, yeah.
It's hard.
So part of the theme in this is the pathos of your character and his tragedy. Can you talk a little about bringing that to it? Because that's one of the things that always gets me with these characters is you love them because of their broken hearts.
It's a great question. And as a producer, the number one thing I wanted to protect, you have to hang on to a couple things in post-production, because once you get to post, everybody is Orson Welles, and nobody's Orson Welles is Orson Welles. And so one of the things I wanted to hang on to last year, and it's just a tiny, it's 20 frames, is Stan touching that keychain, her missing key when he comes into the house. And I think it was important because Stan is, as you were suggesting, he's wounded. He's an injured guy. His wife of 27 years is dead, and he just got fired from his job. So the two things that anchored this guy are gone. So now it's what's supposed to do. And so that's what I locked into, this wounded guy. And the fact that he now has to, even wounded, he has to somehow make his way through this landscape of fucking witches. Call action and get out of my goddamn eye line. I want to play that guy. Let's excavate. Let's see who that guy is. Let's dust off his shit. Let's see what that guy's going to do when a witch comes up. He takes a pipe and bashes it over the fucking head. What else is he going to do?
Right. And he
lost
kind of
his
doesn't
wife.
have anything to lose.
Correct. So it's great. And so the overriding arc last year was for Stan at all times to be back in his chair watching the History Channel drinking 6 beers. And whenever he wasn't in his chair doing that, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. This year, for me, the arc was to get whole again. And the only way he could get whole, and this goes back to your original question, is to get his wife back. But she's been dead for a year. So how are we going to do that? Season 2.
That's a great answer. Thank you.
So how does that change Stan as a character? Like, how does it sort of, like you said, dig up from his rough
It exposes some emotional just gold mines that he didn't know were there, but Dana did. And so exposing those about 4 different times was the stuff that actors' dreams are made of. Because you go into Stan, you go into Archie, although what Carol did with Archie is there's plenty of emotional stuff with Archie, but you get to work backwards with these guys, because unless we find if the guys are a little rough around the edges and there's a little bit of a marginal jackass that just because he's operating out of fear and being a wounded, injured guy, we got to find a way to reconcile that. Otherwise, I'm changing the channel. And so Stan, we find out why we forgive him his trespasses this year.
We're seeing Atlanta become the Hollywood of the South, basically. So what has been your experiences, filming there?
Well, I did 42. I did Jackie Robinson, the Jackie Robinson movie down there, 42. And I was only there for a week, and we were in this huge sound stage. And so I didn't really, we could have been in London for all, it was the same. Once you're in an interior in a sound stage, you could be anywhere on the planet. But Stan, a lot of it are exteriors. And so my experience in Atlanta has been that the crews are fantastic. A lot of technical people have moved down there from Los Angeles, and because the cost of living is cheaper. The unions are strong. It's just that the producers move it down there because there's about a 14% kickback. So if every $100,000 you spend, you get 14 grand back. I think Louisiana's around 17%. So that's a heck of an incentive.
Can you talk a little bit about switching hats between acting and producing and what that whole process is like? Because I'm sure you have like a little bit of control in both areas.
The two biggest ways I can contribute as a producer on Stan Against Evil is to encourage the writers to get the actors the scripts earlier, since it's 8 episodes in 5 weeks, which is preposterous. And so unless the actors have the words and their arcs and know how to work backwards, since we're going to be shooting episode 8 and then episode 1 and then episode 2 and the deck's just going to be shuffled every day when you get to the set. So unless you can rehearse it like a play prior to coming to Atlanta, it's probably not going to work out. So I can try to get the words from the writers earlier, and then while we're shooting, I can create a space on the set that's safe for the actors to explore. My perception of safe creatively, I don't mean physically, I mean creatively. And then in post, I'm really comfortable. I had a post-production company in New York for about 10 years in the Brill Building, and I'm very comfortable in post, and I can make everyone's lives easier. Because I have a photographic memory for what we shot, and so if the editor is really wrestling with how to get out of that scene, I can say, let's go to the end of that 4th take. There's this really interesting thing Janet did that you may not have seen because you used the 1st take. Just go to the end of, humor me, go to the end of the 4th take. Just look at this lovely thing that Janet did. And we're like, oh, I didn't see that. I'm like, I know you didn't. It's okay. I know you didn't. But that's what you're going to go out on.
I think it's amazing you can pick up on those little nuances like that, though.
It's a blessing and a curse.
In the strangest crossover hypothetical situation, how would Stan react if he met Dr. Cox? How would he try?
It would depend on whether or not he needed him. Because you got to remember, Cox, as much of a pain in the ass as he was, he's the best doctor in Sacred Heart. And in the bottom of the 9th, if you have an issue, you want Cox. Medically. Not spiritually or emotionally. So if he needed him, I think he would be able to process him. Otherwise, I think he'd cross to the other side of the street to avoid him. So they're both alphas, and they're both, I don't know if Stan was ever as good at his job as Dr. Cox was, but he was good at his job, and he got fired. Stan got fired. So he didn't get to go out on his own terms, which goes back to your sense of being wounded or injured. I don't know how many have been fired from jobs, but it sucks. And you always look at the person in the mirror every morning, and it just becomes this pool of inadequacy and blame. And it's this horrible circle where you circle the drain, blaming yourself for getting fired, and it sucks. It may have had nothing to do with you. But Stan got fired at the bottom of the 9th after 27 years in conjunction with his wife dying. That blows.
for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe or I will scratch your eyeballs out.